So guys, we got the lawsuit between Joby and Archer Aviation. Now I do apologise, I will not be looking at the camera while I'm driving. But yeah, I did record a video right after the lawsuit came out, and I'm going to be honest with you, I was beating down Archer massively when the lawsuit came out. But what I'm going to do, I'm going to explain to you exactly what has happened to the best of my knowledge while I'm driving. And then we'll discuss exactly how it's going to affect both Archer and Joby Aviation going forward and the whole eVTOL sector. But what happened back in July, this guy called George Kivork worked for Joby Aviation as one of the senior members of staff. He then left and was left in employment for 2 weeks after they originally stated he wanted to terminate his contract, where he had full access to Joby Aviation's files. Joby Aviation done a forensic analysis on Kivork's internal email, and Kivork had created his own personal email where he had sent a lot of this highly confidential files to his personal email. And guys, we all know what the full intention was there. He's leaving the leader in the eVTOL space and going to the main competitor, Archer Aviation. So, Joby then had a contract with a certain developer. Now, we don't know who this developer is. It will come out in the wash very, very soon. But Joby Aviation was contacted by this developer who stated that Archer Aviation has information that is in breach of confidentiality. And this developer then terminated their agreement with Joby Aviation. So Joby Aviation has now sued Archer Aviation due to Archer using trade secrets in order to benefit themselves and position themselves in a better light than Joby Aviation. Now, what are these trade secrets? They're information like positions of vertiports Joby are planning on doing, the specifications of the S4, and why would that be important to Archer Aviation, having specifications about the S4? Well, that way Archer Aviation will be able to get a benchmark on the Midnight and be able to create a superior product in theory, because they know exactly what Joby Aviation is putting into the S4. Now, I'm not saying the Midnight is superior than the S4, but Archer Aviation, with these allegations made by Joby, has the information that would enable Archer to create a superior product. Now, after I created this video, I did see Adam Goldstein put out a tweet defending Archer Aviation's stance on this. So he believes, and this is off the top of my head, that the allegations that Joby Aviation are making are completely incorrect. He stated that Joby Aviation are only jealous that Archer were able to secure deals such as over the lithium patents, the Olympic partnership, and then the Hawthorne deal for the airport in Los Angeles. Now, jumping across, I am going to be completely transparent here. I will be the first to hold my hands up if Archer Aviation are in the wrong. Look, if Archer Aviation are in the wrong and Joby are under full understanding that Archer Aviation has used trade secrets against them through George Kivork, Archer are going to be put bank to rights there, and Joby Aviation are in full right to create a lawsuit against them. If they're stealing IP, that is just a no-go in business. And look, Archer Aviation should feel full wrath of the law there. However, when we actually dive into it, George Kivork was a Joby employee at the time of wrongdoing. When he stole the IP, Joby Aviation were his employer. So if you know that one of your senior executives and members of staff are going to direct competition who, look, you can say Joby is that bit further ahead, but in reality, this whole eVTOL industry is not even an industry yet because nothing has actually come to fruition. So they're fully aware that Archer Aviation are going to do the same thing that Joby want to do. They're trying to get these vertiports out. So would you not be keeping an eye on George Kivork and making sure he does not take any trade secrets? Oh yeah, another thing George done was he changed passwords so Joby could no longer access these files too. But would you not make sure that has all not happened before his last day of employment and get this underway before he even steps foot in Archer Aviation? Because, look, between me and you, we know certain individuals. I'm not accusing anyone of anything. Look, it'll all come out in the court case. But we can see that George's intentions were to bring this to Archer Aviation. Now, Archer Aviation may not have wanted the trade secrets, but look, I think Joby are pretty certain that he has taken these files and they must have proof to bring it to court. So I believe that George, I don't want to accuse anyone of anything, but Joby are pretty certain that this occurred. So the thing I find hard is Adam says they're suing them for this developer having a deal with Archer Aviation. Now, this developer doesn't have a deal with Archer Aviation, and Joby are now suing for financial losses and further financial losses because they no longer have this deal with this developer. And they're blaming Archer Aviation for this breach of confidentiality. Now, this is going to be very hard to prove. And this is the whole thing. Whether Archer's right, Archer's wrong. Look, if George Kivork has taken these files, he is completely in the wrong. And between me and you, he probably has tried at least to share these with Archer Aviation. Now, whether Archer Aviation has viewed these files or not, that's down to the court to understand this. But the only thing is, there's one thing suspecting that they've taken them and common sense knowing that maybe they have these files. And there's another thing proving it. Now, what I find strange is this developer has terminated the agreement with Joby Aviation, but they never made a deal with Archer Aviation. So surely this developer wants to work with someone, because this developer now, we are saying, has no deals. They don't have one with Joby because they've cancelled it, and they haven't made a deal with Archer, and that probably is to do with Kivork. But who do they have a deal with? That'll come out on the wash very, very soon. Could it be the fact that, look, and this is only speculation, but could it be the fact that they're putting two and two together? This deal has been breached due to confidentiality. The developer's saying. The developer doesn't have to prove this, I wouldn't say. If they want to terminate a contract, they can just say that they're terminating their deal. Is Joby, they have seen that George Kivork has taken these files and they're putting two and two together and saying, well, it must be Archer Aviation. It could be that. Look, Joby Aviation could have more evidence than what we are aware of at the moment. So if that's the case, Archer have a lot to answer to. Look, we know Archer does defend lawsuits pretty aggressively. We had that Wisk one all the way back in 21. I think it settled in 23. It never actually went trial was never completed, and it ended with a settlement, and Joby and Wisk actually, or not Joby, Archer and Wisk actually work together now in a collaboration, and Archer now use Skygen, which is Bowen's technology. So, in theory, I don't even know, will this go to court? Will this just get settled before we get there? Could happen. I think the relationship between Archer and Joby is now very, very broken. I don't think Adam's happy with Joby, and I'm sure Joe Ben is certainly not happy with Archer Aviation. My view is that I believe that Joby has caught George Kivork out here. What I would see or foresee, if this is true, I could see him stepping away from Archer Aviation, but I don't know. I think it's going to be very hard to prove that Archer Aviation has done wrongdoing if there is no actual deal that has gone through with Archer. How is the developer going to prove that Archer has Joby's confidential information? It's going to be very hard. This is going to be a civil case. I know loads of people are saying about prison. With civil cases, there's not normally prison involved. But look, I'm from Ireland, so I am not fully up on the law. I know you have different laws in different states as well. It makes it even more complicated. So you guys probably know a little bit more about me, or more than me, about lawsuits in the US. Look, it's not something I really want to get up on either. More or less leave that to the judges, or well, this will be the jury, and that's what will drag it on a little bit more. But how is this going to affect both Joby and Archer Aviation? Well, we've seen the effect right as it happened. I thought it was quite strange that I think it was put forward on November 19th and got released on November 20th. This was the worst days in the stock market for Archer Aviation since that whole DeepSeek saga. So I think that I don't want to accuse anyone of anything, but it was very strange that it came out on them days after the stock was beaten down already. It was either really unlucky for Archer Aviation, or was it tactically put in? We don't know. We can only speculate on that. I did do $8 call options for January 16th, and I'm going to be honest, I'd done it before I even knew about any of this, so I was having a bad day that evening when it all came out. Joby then have a lawsuit against them for something pretty similar. Is it with Avionics or Avionics? I don't know off the top of my head the company name, LLC. Accusing them of using, I don't know if it's trade secrets, but they use their information in order to reduce the amount of research and development Joby Aviation would actually have to undertake, and it saved them tens of millions of dollars. This contractor is a legend. Now, this is for February 26th. That's going to take place, and then the Joby Archer is going to, the preliminary hearing is in March 26th. Look, I think both will get settled before then. I wouldn't like to see them go to court. Look, it's taken away from Joby. Had a fantastic week in Dubai. I think this week we should have been talking about that. The whole macro industry has pulled, or the whole macro environment has pulled down this eVTOL industry at the moment. Look, in a time where we're going into the final phases of certification with Joby, we're going into the exciting VTOL and transition with a pilot on board with Archer Aviation. I just think it's detrimental for the whole industry. We need these two giants in this industry to be working together. Look, we don't want any tailwind, or we don't want any anchor holding us back now at the moment. Look, if cities want to bring both S4 and Midnight together into certain vertiports, you don't want one company refusing to be there because the other's there. Look, we all know that both companies can only get around 50 of their vehicle out per year at the start. So we need as much of these aircraft, whether it's Midnight or S4, just for public adoption. It'll help each other to get out to the public. And I feel like the whole lawsuit, it's like Coca-Cola and Pepsi going to war, and it just slows down the whole industry. You don't need it happening, and will it give time for competitors to start catching up with them? Because look, senior executives are now going to have to deal with a lawsuit rather than trying to deal with... They could use that time to deal with the FAA as such. Do let me know what you think about the lawsuit. Do you think that Joby's in the right? Do you think that Archer's in the right? How do you feel about the two going head to head before the industry even kicks off alone? It's going to be very hard to prove your financial losses when it's all forward looking statements anyway. I don't know. I think this happens in loads of industries. I feel like before something good happens, such as certification, you always get some bad news to shake off the weak money, and it goes back to the rightful owners, the long-term investors and the big money. So I don't think it's going to be as detrimental as some people are projecting. They think this will be the end of Archer Aviation. They think Joby Aviation are going to wipe them out now. Nah, look, this is going to get settled pretty quickly. I think both companies don't want this to drag on. We don't need it for the whole sector. Beta Technologies, how are they going to play into the mix? They're going for more cargo, but could they enter this passenger section now that the two passenger giants are at war with each other? Do let me know in the comments. And if you want to know more about Beta, make sure to check out this video next.